Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's edition. Let's get started with some space weather. We are currently in a G1 Geomagnetic Storm. It has been at a KP of 5 now for at least the past 2 hours. So on the 2nd of March, we have a G1. In the early hours of March 1st, which I'll get to here in a minute, we had a G2. And right now, our solar wind speeds are coming in at 608.7 kilometers per second with a density of 9.0. Taking a look at our sun, and we are technically blank right now. But if you notice in the center portion of our star, you will see a bright active region. And SPACEWEATHER.com is actually circling this as an area of interest, I should say. Nonetheless, it is not yet labeled a sunspot. So we technically had one day with a sunspot, without sunspots on our sun. Now, also, and we'll take a deeper look at this at our space weather section on grandsolarminimum.com. Because when we show you the bigger picture here on actual activity from our star, it's not looking promising. So I made a mention last week that a lot of these sunspots, if we get them, are going to develop right before our eyes. And here we are with possibly not one, but maybe just 2 areas that could develop into sunspots. Nonetheless, we are in a G1 like I had once stated. The solar wind that is now facing Earth directing, I'm sorry, I should say coronal hole, is right there in the very center of our star. The solar wind that's affecting us right now is the solar wind from the coronal hole in the southern region, which is turning away from us as we speak. So we will continue to be on the lookout for the next 3 days. By March 5th, that is Friday, we could see coronal hole developing or bringing us solar wind speeds around the 600 kilometers per second range again. And I will go ahead and call it now. We are definitely looking at the chance for geomagnetic storms. Very low one. G1 possibly, maybe no more than a G2. But nonetheless, we have seen some increases lately in solar storms, but yet we're still in the weaker spot. March 1st, the early hours of March 1st, we had a crack in the magnetosphere, and that was unexpected. That gave us KP indice of 6 for about an hour or so. And then today, with the expected solar wind stream arriving, it was enough to trigger a G1 geomagnetic storm. And so looking at this new coronal hole that is now Earth-facing leads me to believe that this one is just as capable of producing a G1, if not a strong G2. We will keep our eyes open, and what comes with these coronal holes and solar winds, these geomagnetic activities. Well, earthquakes and volcanoes go on the uptick, and I have some stuff to talk about on that as well. But first things first, our GCI is up a bit at 513. That's 5.13. That's the upper atmosphere of the upper part of our atmosphere, the thermosphere, and we keep track of that as it's been relatively very, very cold here since the minimum, obviously, but technically our sun is still in minimum conditions. 32 days without sunspots so far in the year 2021. That's over half of the year so far. Cosmic radiation dosage is down 7.5%. That's a 0.9% change in the last 7 days. But just the other day, before this solar wind invasion, we had values as high as 8.5 for 3 straight days. We have seen some lower dosage rates here, so it was intriguing to see them jump up back into the 8.5%, also showing us that solar minimum is not quite yet over. It is sputtering to almost a complete halt, but still giving us minimum type conditions from our star this late in the game. Again, we expected to see a little bit more activity, and right now what we're seeing for the beginning of this new cycle. When 2010 was ushered in, they saw a total of 51 days without spots for the entire year of 2010. I'm mentioning 2010 because that was the following year after the deepest part of the minimum. Some could argue that we ended that deep part of the minimum right around July of 2025. Or 2020, I'm sorry, not 2025, 2020. And we saw some solar activity from August, September, and then it kind of died down a little bit, came back in November, December, and then it got quiet. It's still relatively quiet. I mean, we've seen more sunspots in the last 2 weeks, but these have been very small sunspots as well. Let's go over to the grandsolarminimum.com and take a look. There you see where it spiked up on March 1st to a KP of 6 and then stepped down to a 5 before ending its storm conditions 3 hours later, settling at a 4. And then, of course, right now we are at a G1. Now, will this get stronger? I don't know. I checked earlier, about an hour before the show started, and our solar wind speeds were at 639. They have dropped to 608 kilometers per second. So if this storm was going to increase in strength, I would expect the solar wind also to do so. Take a look here at the SDO in motion, and this is where we're getting the current solar wind from, this hole here. This one is turning Earth facing now, and so when we get right about here, we know within a 2 to 3 day window, we will see solar winds spewing from this coronal hole. Now, this one is covering a little bit more in width, a lot more than this one. So it is possible we could see some strong solar winds from this coronal hole by March 5th. There is a particular area of interest as far as a sunspot, and then we have to watch this area back here, as it is now just spontaneously kicked up. Let's go ahead and watch this one more time without my annoying arrow. So watch for the bright sunspot region to just flare up out of nowhere right here. That's the one in question right now. It doesn't look like, and then we get another one that all of a sudden appears. But I'll also say this. This one looks like it's maintaining, not really growing or declining. This one looks like it barely lit up and is maintaining. So it is possible to have these two areas of active regions that are bright, but not possess the dark cores that are needed for these sunspots. So right now we're on a watch for some sunspots. Definitely one Earth facing, possibly. Very small, though. We're talking sunspot number 11, if at all. All right, and then the secondary one that's further back closer to the eastern limb, well, not really eastern limb, but turning towards Earth. That one is very small as well. It appears to be flickering out. So we'll continue to monitor this. And what's coming up after that? Let's take a look at the big picture. And satellite image showing us nothing. Pretty quiet. And this is what we kind of expected. And I did say this, and I'll say it again. We will probably see more of this and this, which is spontaneous and right before our eyes, than we will of these obvious signals that we have sunspots coming. Now, I will say this is a little bit more peppered than it was before. We have a slight region here, slight region there. We have two regions up here as well that are very faint and weak and are not indications of sunspots. But just a couple days ago, we didn't see these brighter active regions. So we'll continue to watch, but right now, it is possible we are still sputtering. And solar cycle 25 is like stuck in the mud right now as we continue to see solar minimum conditions, but that's changing. And especially, like I said, the last 2 days, we have seen not one, but two geomagnetic storms. And here's the first one. And this was on March 1st, 2021. Solar wind speed started increasing late on February 28th from 369 kilometers per second to about 521 kilometers per second at 6:33 UTC. Geomagnetic KP index of 4 threshold was reached at 3:45 UTC and then followed by a 5, which is a minor, by 3:59 UTC, and then finally a KP of 6 which is a moderate storm right around 4:20 UTC. So not one, but two. Hold on a second, folks. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. So the first one was on March 1st, early, unexpected. And then we go to today, 24 hours later, and we have at least a 2-hour storm so far. But weak. It's a G1. But the fact that we're starting to see more geomagnetic activity like this, we've had a few storms now, even though sunspots are low, this is an indication that maybe solar cycle 25 is going to start getting underway. But again, it's at a very, very slow rate here, folks. Very slow rate. And what happens when we have solar wind and geomagnetic activity? Well, we have a lot of highly charged particles in the atmosphere. And that also means that we are heating up the core, and we have seen now the 8th eruption. Very strong ash emission today as well. This has been going on since February 16th. And again, you know, I was almost had the opportunity to broadcast last night. Was thinking to myself, wow, I can't believe we've seen 7. And it seems like every day I turn my head, another strong explosion from Mount Etna in Italy. And then we have Sinabung producing a 40,000 feet ash plume. The eruption produced pyroclastic flows up to 3.1 miles down the eastern southeast slope of the volcano. This happened at 23:42 on March 1st, ejecting ash up to about 40,000 feet above sea level. This is the first major eruption since August of 2020. So again, and it's look, don't believe me about increased solar activity or decreased solar activity having an impact on volcanoes, especially when we're getting bombarded with solar wind. I believe in August we were having a couple of minor days of G1 storms and lots of solar wind, lots of highly charged particles penetrating the Earth's core, generating some pretty strong eruptions in August and September as well. So is this the last of it? I don't know. Hold on. All right, my apologies, folks. No more distraction. Deadly snowfall leaves 94 injured, hundreds of cars trapped in South Korea. Okay, really, that was the last time, I promise. Okay. Anyway, deadly snowfall leaves 94 injured, hundreds of cars trapped in South Korea. One person, unfortunately, was killed while 94 others sustained injuries as heavy snowfall engulfed South Korea's northeast region. Authorities reported Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. Hundreds of vehicles were trapped on some parts of highways along the East Coast, while more than 460 accidents occurred on snow-covered roads. And no big. I'm not trying to sensationalize every single winter storm that happens across the United States. But I am reporting these larger events just because of what time of the year we're in. This is technically meteorological spring. And over the weekend, I spoke to a gentleman who lives out on a ranch farm. They have goats, pigs, chickens. I mean, this is a functioning farm, beehives, lots of land. I think over 25 acres on that one particular property. But, you know, we were talking about the snow that happened in December here in upstate New York. We got 33 inches of snow that weekend, or that week, I should say. It was on a Wednesday. And we've had at least a foot or more on the ground since that day. In other words, the snow melt didn't happen up here. The temperature stayed cold and cold for a while. So him telling me that he hasn't seen a winter like this in a while. This guy lived in the higher elevations, actually on the border of Vermont. So I trust the opinion of a guy who knows what bad winters are. In the location of his ranch, it was up higher, and he was surrounded by mountains. And for him to say that it's been a while since he has witnessed a winter like this, where the snow went on the ground and stayed there for the entire season. And to this day, it is March 2nd, that has not changed. Even though we've had some temperatures in the upper 30s and lower 40s, we are still dealing with quite a bit of snow on the ground at this moment. And, you know, I'm from a part of the country where it doesn't snow like that. So to me, this is definitely unusual to see the snow. And it makes you feel like you live in the Arctic. If you're from Southwest Ohio or Indiana or Kentucky or Tennessee, and then you move to a part of the country where you see snow, one big falling, and then it stays. In Ohio, where I'm from, it snows, it's on the ground for 4 to 6 days, and it melts. Okay, so a little odd for me to see from December 16th. And it's almost, well, right now at this rate, we'll still have snow on the ground on March 16th. So that's 3 months of snow and temperatures staying cold enough to be on the ground. Now, what does this mean? Is next winter going to be as cold? I don't know. Possibly. Right now, where we're heading with our UAH temperatures, that reminds me, by the way, let's refresh. Did Roy update this yet? Come on, guy. Come on, guy. No, Rush Limbaugh tribute's up, but we don't have our UAH. Is that selfish of me? I think it is. I don't know. But anyway, where our temperatures are right now, where they're heading, okay? Where we were last fall in October, our temperatures was at a 0.53 in October. And they went up from the summertime into the fall months, and we're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize it was going to do that. Well, then we had that sudden stratospheric warming event that started getting most of us weather geeks pumped up and talking about the polar vortex happening this year and possibly being a very weak one. And sure enough, that sudden stratospheric warming event was enough to push and create that colder air to filter into the lower 48. It gave us a pretty good cold snap. February's numbers, I mean, again, disappointed that the numbers are not in, because I think a lot of us that follow this channel are anxious to see where we are in those temperatures after seeing how much we've dropped from October. Currently, we're sitting at a 0.12. All right. So January was cold, but I don't think January had the punch of the winter weather like we had today or today in February. I just don't think January was that consistent. So when we got that number for December at 0.27, now mind you, we were sitting in November at 0.43, and roughly for the majority of the fall and the summer, we were high, I thought. The 0.6 region, the 0.7 region, whatnot. Well, we didn't get to 0.7, but we did get to 0.63. Then we fell slowly to the 0.5s, and then got into the 0.4s and stayed there for a while. And then that sudden drop in December was like, whoa! That's when that sudden stratospheric warming event happened. So that contributed as well into what came next, which was an okay cold December, turning into a really cold January, into a very cold February for the rest of the country. And where I live in the Northeast, it got cold enough to snow in early November. So moving forward, in November, when it didn't snow, we got all that and then some in the middle of December. So just in case if you're wondering where what location I'm in, so I lost my train of thought here. I apologize. We were talking about the cold shifting into February, how cold it was for the rest of the country, not just a smaller part, because I'm in the Northeast, so it's always going to be cold. We can expect that. But seeing the amount of cold that we got across the country, what it did to Texas and other southern states, the ice. And it's just, then we saw the 80 to 90 degree temperature swing, and those same states that received snowstorms and all that. These are the kinds of temperature swings and weather swings that we can expect to see in grand solar minimums in the future. And right now, we're just at the beginning. So this is just like a small sample size of what's coming our way. This will be a more frequent thing the weaker the sun gets. And we know right now, or we can speculate based on what solar cycle 25 has done so far, we can speculate that we are looking at a weaker solar cycle in 25 than we had in 24. Just based on the lack of activity that we've seen thus far. Okay? So, if we're going to see a weaker cycle, and we're already starting to see these weird extreme temperature swings and extreme weather swings, and they're just going to happen, spotty. Think about when these are on a regular basis. Think about when these are on a continuing basis, where they happen more than just 8 days. Or more than just a couple of days. And that is what we're facing in the future. So the people that weren't prepared for this in Texas, consider this your wake-up call. For the governments that weren't prepared for this, consider this your wake-up call. For those people who are dealing with policy issues with the current administration, let this be a wake-up call. There's a reason why you're going to face some pushback. Because, well, the dogs don't like the Green New Deal either. But when we are seeing the cold temperatures like we see right now, and, I saw an article today by NOAA trying to say that we have less extreme cold events than we've had in the past. And I think it's funny that they're still trying to find a way to just kind of sweep this winter's cold under the rug. Just like Weather Channel did with the winter storms. They didn't start telling us the names of these storms until Uri, which was the letter U. All of a sudden they're like, oh, Winter Storm Uri. Like, oh, what happened to the others? Like, there for the first few months, you didn't see it in their headlines. You didn't see it on their channel. I don't really watch Weather Channel that much anyway, but still. What I'm trying to make is that this winter's cold and snow and and events were predicted. In fact, I'm not trying to be like totally pat myself on the back, but I talked about areas in the south, more ice in this area here where my blue arrow is. You'll see that in grand solar minimums, more ice storms. We got some snow this year. Far deep as here. Houston, 16 degrees waking up one morning. So I was right about what was going to happen down here. Of course, this was easy to call. Cold and snowy in the northeast. Cold and snowy up here in the northern plains and all that Great Lakes area. And then the northwest, you know. Alaska is usually a warmer during grand solar minimums as well. And we saw that. We saw temperatures warmer in Alaska the day it was 16 degrees in Houston. But the one area that we are going to have to continue to watch is this belt across the south here. From eastern Texas all the way northeast through Virginia and to Pennsylvania and a little bit more further south too. North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, the far northern parts. Middle Tennessee, we'll see more snow and ice events. We'll see more of that as we continue through. The weaker the sun gets, the weaker the magnetosphere is, and the increase of cosmic radiation that pierces our atmosphere, that interacts with other particles, particulates that are already in the atmosphere, and boom, you have a recipe for a big, big bowl of weather. Not just the sample size or the individual packets that you might buy in your grocery stores. You will get the full size. Because we have seen tons of weather events this year. Flooding, record flooding everywhere. In fact, speaking of that, we have an entire towns of Kentucky left underwater following days of record flooding. I do apologize for not being on the air. Last time we spoke, we were talking about the possibility for lots of rain for Kentucky and Tennessee, and boy, did they get it. By Monday morning, 3-day rainfall totals were over 6.75 inches. I was only saying 3 to 5 inches across these parts. So they crushed the forecast here. Crushed it. 6.75 inches came in from the London and Corbin areas in southeastern Kentucky. Other Kentucky cities like Bowling Green, Murray, Hopkinsville, as well as Jackson, Tennessee, recorded 4 to 6 inches of rain during that time. 3 days, guys. That is a month and a half's worth of rain in 3 days. And that's what happens when you have an abundance of highly charged particles in your atmosphere. I was watching the Weather Channel the other day, and they were talking about purple skies. And the meteorologist's explanation of the purple skies was that the atmosphere was just full of moisture. And he was halfway right. And the other part that he didn't tell was that the fact that it was also full of highly charged particles. That's what gives it the purple look in the sky. Has nothing to do with moisture. Water vapor does not change colors in the night sky. Trust me, folks, when you have a highly charged atmosphere, you will see the color sensation from what we all believe is an electric universe, electric sky. And thanks to these particles from the sun being in our atmosphere, that's what gives it that electric view, especially now. That is why you see the purple skies. Anyway, so 6.7 inches of rain, 5.69 in Smith's Grove. Bowling Green had 5.65 inches of rain. And Murray with 5.64. Liberty coming in at 5.53. Guys, that's a lot of flooding, folks. 13 counties had a state of emergency. Here they are all highlighted. I'll go ahead and zoom that in a little bit more for you. Mainly in the eastern part of the state, Murray County, the only western county. Central Kentucky was Liberty and Irvine, and then Boonville. And then you had a bunch in the east, Jackson, Vico, Hindman, Phelps, Paintsville, Sandy Hook counties. All of you have declared state of emergencies from these heavy rains over the past several days. All right, so I'm not backing down on my promise. Once again, we get to that part of the broadcast where we'll talk a little bit about ways to prep for upcoming grand solar minimum, things that you can do to be a step ahead. And a lot of the things I get in the comments and emails is what are easy and what can be grown during winter. So I found this little article here. Winter can be a frustrating time for the vegetable grower because you have several weeks to go before officially growing season begins. Fortunately, there is some good news. There are certain vegetables that can be sown in the winter to get a head start before the growing season starts. And the first thing they list is peas. Peas can germinate in temperatures as low as 39 degrees Fahrenheit. This makes them excellent vegetable to grow in the winter. The pea shoots taste just like the pods themselves and also provide you with plenty of nutrients. Plan on growing 2 to 3 seeds in a single pot for best results. Grow in a sunny window seal. So one thing I really like about this website here, homesteadsurvivalsite.com, the explanations and the examples they give as well. But again, if you're not a vegetable lover, I think peas are one of the sweetest tasting vegetables out there, and personally are one of my favorites. So if I'm forced into a grand solar minimum and I got to select vegetables and I know these are going to grow in the winter, this is good information to retain. Peas, 39 degrees Fahrenheit. We know that. Not only that, they taste good. I think peas are delicious, especially when they're fresh. So good to know. Second, salad leaves. Mari's favorite. She wants me to always eat salad every day, every single day, but she's not a salad guy. But I'm going to have to, I guess, at some point, right? But salad leaves. Winter hardy lettuce can be grown inside a greenhouse during the winter. Grow in open containers and space out to avoid root disturbances. 10 inches apart is a good rule of thumb to follow. Orientalleaves.com salad. Oriental leaves, corn salad, and cilantro are some of your best choices. So again, not only does it tell you that salad leaves are good to grow during the winter, but use a greenhouse. It's not like you can just go outside and do this. My greenhouse, Oriental leaves, corn salad, and cilantro are your best choices. So this is a very informative article, in my opinion. If you want some basic knowledge on what to grow over the winter. Number 3 and 4, two that I really can't stand, and I'm just going to have to eat a lot more salad leaves and peas because cabbage is not my favorite. But if you start growing cabbage during the winter, you can enjoy vitamin-rich leaves by the time summer formally hits. In contrast to this, cabbage that is sown during springtime will not be ready to pick and eat until later in the summer. Good. I'm just kidding. But no, it is rich in vitamins, and so, I mean, there is benefits. And, when you're faced with lack of food, you may not have a choice. You might have to eat cabbage. You don't like it? Tough. It's going to give you what you need to survive. Number 4, spinach. You could start a spinach plant in late summer. Spinach comes packed with vitamins, which makes it incredibly valuable. Of course, we all know about spinach. Popeye the Sailor Man, I mean, he got really strong, so it's got to be good, right? Place the seeds in individual planting modules with 3 to 4 seeds per module at least 6 inches apart from one another. Pick a few leaves at a time, permitting replacement leaves to grow. You will get multiple harvests with each plant. So good to know you can grow spinach, and this is after the summertime harvest. Spring onions. Not a fan of onions, but hey, again, known as green onions, which I can tolerate those a little bit more. Saute those things up with some butter and some seasoning, you know. But anyway, also known as green onions, spring onions can be sown into moist soil during the winter months. Plant 3 seeds per module. Be sure to place covers over the onions from snow and frost. The first stems should be ready by mid-spring, when gardeners will just be starting to plant them in the first place. So, maybe you didn't know there were some winter plants that you could start, or vegetables. Now you know. And again, every broadcast I'm going to try to include something about gardening, something about prepping. It doesn't matter. We need to have the knowledge to be able to adapt to what's coming in the near future. I know a lot of you, and myself included, thought that when the grand solar minimum hit immediately, that was it. Everything shuts down and all these horrible things that we heard take place right away. I feel like that where we are right now, this is more than just a 2-minute warning. We're inside a minute to go in the game. And if you don't have your prep in order now, or knowledge of basic survival skills. Now is the time to start doing it and getting it going now. Increasing your knowledge, reading books. I know myself and Mari, we have probably a lot more material to offer because of some of the books that we have here. And the best thing about books is if we get an EMP or a solar flare that wipes out the grid and we're without power, YouTube videos are useless. So we have books to power us with knowledge that will always be there as long as they don't burn up in a fire from the solar flare, I guess, too. So you got to look at it that way. But you know what I mean. Read books, buy books, have plenty of books around your house for prep, for survival, for anything that will help you during an emergency. And this week's, obviously, you know, we got to be concerned about cold, wet conditions in the future. After 2026 and 2027, we will really start to notice as we get even closer to the 2030s. And by the time we are in late 2020s, we will know for certain that we are going to see some serious change. Now, what's going to happen between now and the end of this decade? Well, we're going to continue to see these weather extremes and these extreme patterns and swings in temperature and climate and everything. That's going to continue to happen, but it's building to something that's going to be more frequent and more intense. And we will face crop challenges. We will face more weather crises like the one we had in Texas, where it's just simple, not winterized. And that's what a lot of this comes down to, is that people in Texas don't expect to get negative values for temperatures at nighttime, not counting wind chills, folks. All right, I'm going to check one more time at Dr. Roy Spencer and see if he has got that information up. Come on, baby. Let's hit the refresh button together. 1, 2, 3. No, not there yet. So hopefully tomorrow, if it comes out, we'll probably just go live and just talk about temperature, if it dropped or went up. I mean, every time I try to guess which way it goes, I'm always the opposite. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut, and we'll just have to see the values for ourselves tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow. Let's take a look at the GFS really fast here. This is the outlook that we look at the end of the broadcast. Kind of give us an idea of what's coming. At least for the first 6 to 7 days, we can trust this forecast. So here we are, day 1. Southeast getting pummeled with heavy rain that moves off the coast by Thursday, March 4th. It's all pretty quiet by the evening, but for the Northeast, looks like some lake effect snow develops across Lake Ontario and Lake Erie in the western central parts of New York. High pressure will pretty much extinguish any snow chances after that. But on Friday, March 5th, a small low pressure system tries to get organized in the south, Texas. High pressure will push that off into the Gulf. And there you go, Florida. Sorry about that. Daytona, Central Florida, you guys will definitely be dealing with the Jacksonville area as well, dealing with heavy rain for your weekend on Saturday. That will move off the coast, and Sunday will be much better. High pressure dominates for the majority part of the United States on March 8th. Then we have another system moving into the northwest. Oregon and Washington sees rain and snow mix into parts of northern California. Seeing some snow across the mountain regions of Montana, Idaho, and into the Dakotas. But that low pressure system, we're going to see a temperature roller coaster here, a ridge and fridge, as Bastardi calls it. But that will push into Canada. The majority of that snow stays in the northern parts of the northern plains, North Dakota, Minnesota, parts of northeastern Wisconsin, and also northern Michigan. Maybe some flurries in the northeast as this system slides by. It will bring a cold front by March 12th, and we will see colder air returning to the northwest and the northeast, okay? So this is where we got to say that's as far as you want to trust the GFS. And as of the 13th of March, we see a big low pressure system setting up across the Plain States. Now, Futurecast has it moving across the same direction as the previous storm, but this storm treks a little bit further south. So more parts of the Dakotas get snow, all of Minnesota, all of Wisconsin, most of Michigan, and then most of the Northeast, as that will also bring in colder air into the region and possibly some light snow showers. Then another low pressure system once again is indicated in that same general region, but this one looks a lot weaker, and it looks like that we're going to be warmer. So this could be just all rain. Let's take a look at temperatures. That colder Arctic air trying to make its appearance once again in the lower 48. Again, I think the middle of the month, we see some cold temperatures, maybe colder than what's being forecasted. Here we are on the 8th. Most of the country looks pretty good. These are daytime highs for Monday, March 8th. Overnight lows, pretty fair for this time of year, especially March high temperatures. Look at that, nicely heating up by March 10th. Even some 50-degree values in the Northeast in New York. And then another blast of cold air behind that on the 12th, which brings colder air to the northern plains, the Northeast, and before it pushes more warm air out to the coast. Another ridge and fridge is expected by mid-March, but then big blocking area here. Some very cold air trying to make its way into the lower 48 by the middle of March. And that also cools things off in the Northwest. Really keeps that heat confined to the deep south as temperatures through mid-March struggle to get back into spring-like conditions. So this next cold front from this blob of cold air in the Arctic, this is March 7th week, but the majority of this colder air is going to stay in the northeastern part of the United States when it comes to this Arctic stuff. And you guys can clearly see that. But for the most part, we are really seeing this area starting to warm up a little bit more. Now, it's colder over here on the Russia side than it is in the northern Canada side. So, again, we've already noticed that the polar vortex is tightening again. Both sides are retreating in as far as the cold goes, so that gives you an indication. The fact that we're getting all of this Arctic air staying in the Arctic Circle and not spreading to the mid-latitudes is an indication that winter indeed is winding down. Now, I'm not going to say or rule out some cold days for the Northeast, the Great Lakes, and the Northwest. I'm not going to rule those days out. But for the most part, I'd be surprised to see any more major snowstorms moving across the United States into the Northeast at this time. There is thoughts that there could be a major nor'easter near somewhere around the 14th and 15th of March. That's still quite a ways off. It's only the 2nd of March, guys. But right now, March appears to be an average or maybe slightly above average month when it comes to climate. And let's just take a look at the snowfall totals that we're expecting from now through the 16th. This is through the 5th. Much different picture than what we showed you 2 weeks ago. Look at this. This is through the 10th of March. Still, northern parts of the United States are getting snow. This is through the 12th to 13th. More snow in the northern plain states, northern Great Lakes, Northwest, and the Northeast. And that is where I believe this is a perfect representation of where we could see some of that old man winter stuff still taking place, but not far. Now, next week, I don't think this line goes that far south. I think we're staying up here in central to western New York, across Michigan. It cuts Ohio out of it. Most of these states here will probably be cut out of it as well. So this line will be further north by next week. But I think that's where we're going to see, if any, winter weather. It'll be focused in that region for that time. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me tonight. Thank you for tuning in. I want to say hi to a few people out there. Richard from New Mexico, good to see you. Knife Collector, how you doing? Geo85, familiar face as well. Jerome. Ian, good to have you around, sir. Summer BC as well, always a pleasure. Very enthusiastic Gardner also as well in the chat. Kansas Terry, good evening to you folks. Nice to see so many familiar faces, and nice to see some new faces too, guys. Keep it up. We appreciate all comments about where you are, your weather, or what you're growing in your garden. Please like and share. And guys, if you like what we do here and want to be a contributing part to this channel, becoming a Patreon for $1 a month. It's not so much being a member of the Patreon channel. It's just a way of giving the channel $1 a month and saying thanks. And we take everything that we get and reinvest it into the channel to make the website better, to make the YouTube channel better, to get better broadcast equipment and also information on as many platforms as we possibly can. But again, if you guys appreciate us, check out our Patreon channel. Just $1 goes a long way. And of course, we have the Teespring store too. So if you guys want to buy stuff that is global cooling related, I love CO2 or cosmic rays, anything related to the sun, I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Maria is the designer of all the t-shirts and hoodies and hats and all the other apparel. You're going to love the GSM stuff. You can check out our Teespring store through our YouTube channel, and you'll see the link right there on the front page. All right, guys, sorry for the shameless plugs, but I got to do it to pay the bills. It's been a pleasure tonight. We hope you tune in. Tomorrow, I think we'll do another if not Thursday. But if we do get that Roy Spencer information, I'll try to have a report on that for you as soon as possible. Till then, everyone, please stay safe. Have a good night, and we will talk soon. Take care.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.